Hello again, we are back. A movie so good you had to see it twice. We're going to follow up on our conversation about the movie Sinners by Ryan Coogler. So picking up where we left off, the movie Sinners. We've all seen it twice. It all hit us individually. One of the curious things for me is this whole foundation of Christianity. We talk about flourishing. Is Sammy flourishing? Those questions tend to resonate with me as I think more about the film. I'm curious for you guys, when you think about your upbringing in Christianity and the role that it played, assuming that it played a role, I would love to hear a perspective from each of you on how it made you think about growing up as Christian youth, Black Christian youth. So maybe Nakeia, if you wouldn't mind as our guest kicking that off for us.
Well, I think the film touched on, many aspects of Christianity. And I think the idea of even flourishing in general was sort of framed in a sense of like, there's flourishing through like legacy, there's flourishing through community, and then there's like flourishing through maybe an escape to the afterlife. Mm-hmm. And I feel like all of those themes were really present in my own upbringing in a Pentecostal church. I think that also this like allure maybe of like immortality really exists heavy in the Pentecostal church. I mean, the way heaven even is described is to me a direct reflection of the scene when Pearline is singing on the stage and everybody's stomping and clapping. That to me is what I perceive heaven to be, which is, the ultimate, right, freedom in unison. And so I really felt like he did that well. And frankly, it's a scene that I've seen before many times growing up. And when, for example, a vampire would attack or would get someone, I really sort of saw that almost as like the Holy Spirit and what I've seen it do from my own eyes, like how it has, just growing up seeing people fall out, speaking in tongues, getting happy, all this, I felt like musically, spiritually, the film showed that very, very well. And for me, it just hankered down on the fact that how we arrived here in the U.S., in America, we brought this spirituality with us. Mm-hmm. And whatever they tried to prescribe deep within us, this spirituality already was so deep and so beyond them that, we held it so close. And I think we knew it was always there in the way that it was sort of interpreted, whether it's through Christianity or other spiritual, like Annie's character, being able to cross over to the spiritual realm. Yeah. Like I really, really felt that just reminded me so much of my upbringing at church, just people crossing over back and forth, coming back, having visions, seeing things, then telling you they saw things, then stuff happening. All that was really, really real for me. And man, I can't say enough. Like, it's hard for me to maybe admit this, but, I used to be scared of my own voice at church. I used to be scared because when I would sing at church, some of the things that would happen to people, it used to scare me. And like, frankly, I think that's part of the reason sometimes where, I have an internal battle with singing because I love it. I love it so much. But if you grow up as a child and you're singing and people falling out and, telling you got a gift and you can do all these things, that could be real, real intimidating. And I think he touched on those themes as well.
Having been the beneficiary of your singing at key points in my life, you do have a gift. I don't say it often because I know that it can be awkward, but I remember the power of your singing, and it's impressive. It's impressive. So I hope that you are still on your own terms nurturing your gift. Boogie, to your question, for me, grew up in a Baptist church surrounded by a lot of believers and a lot of community activists, right? And never been afraid of the occult, never been afraid of the spiritual realm, never been afraid of the veneration of ancestors, have known for a long time that which is referred to as voodoo or even hoodoo is old, it's African, and its roots are not evil by definition. So that's never scared me. So when I'm me not liking scary movies, it's because Hollywood's good at it, not because I'm worried about my soul and my salvation. So I'll just say that up front.
Yeah.
I was moved by the relationship in this movie between father and son, because for all of the fire and brimstone that Saul Williams' character, the preacher, delivers, he doesn't have his son locked in a cage. Right? Like there's free will flowing rampant through this movie. And that's a critical part of faith. It choices, right? Choices have consequences, but the ability to choose to follow a particular, deity is there. And so watching his father, after he's done his chores, gotten his younger siblings up, clocked his quota of cotton picking for the day, and then come to his father like, yo, I've done what you asked. I read this scripture. Now give me my guitar. Dad didn't trip. Dad wasn't like, nah, boy, you can't have it. I destroyed the. Like, there's a lot of things that could have happened in his character that didn't. And so to read him as a bad guy is tricky for me. So I want to be clear that I saw the father as stern, which is different than he was in some way abusive. And I thought that was paid off when the twins pick up their little cousin and they ask him, in the conscience of their abusive father, who was his brother, how is their uncle treating you? And he's like, nah, he's good. He don't beat me. Mama gives me more of the spankings. He ain't, all the setup in the beginning of that pastor character in that church, I thought was powerful, well done, but with a soft hand to what's going on in that community. At the end, when we see him again and Sammy opens the doors of the church and the crowd gasps, the singing stops, and he gets everyone calm. Like, they could have tripped out and he calms everyone. Now, he does invite Sammy in, which is an interesting thing. I'm not saying Sammy's a vampire because we see him later and he's aged and it's the daylight, but he does invite Sammy in before Sammy walks in because like, come here, son. So there's that. But I thought even up to that scene, there was a father trying to protect his son more than I thought there was a pastor trying to, pray the demon out of him, although that's there, drop the guitar, all the things. He never drops the guitar. We don't really know why. So I'll just simply say I wasn't at all conflicted in walking in there in my faith and watching this movie and feeling like, oh my God, it's demonic, it's sinister, we should be boycotting. Like, I'm not on any of that. I thought it was part of the mix and milieu of not just Christianity, but all the other influences in that Black community coming to bear. And I thought it was really done with, I think, a lot of care, a lot of research, and a balanced storytelling at a time when the church is shrinking, its reputation is in the gutter for a lot of people. He could have taken a different creative tack, And I thought how he handled it was really, really thoughtful.
Man, that's deep. To piggyback your point about being invited in, which is really critical to pick up on, you also recall in the beginning of the film, careful because the devil will follow you home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So is the sequel, all right? Are we on to something here or just paying too much attention? But no, I think that's dope. Man, that's really interesting to hear you guys' perspective.
What's your perspective? Sorry,
Yeah.
you about to go there. My bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up. We called it Methodist as a kid, and we saw the letters A and me outside the church too. What I grew to learn far too late was that stood for African Methodist Episcopal.
Yep.
But that was not talked about, even though there were all black folks in the church. I believe AME was founded early 1800s as a response to racial segregation in the Protestant church.
Richard
That's
Allen.
important.
Yeah.
Right, Richard Allen, right? Philly. So knowing that may have shifted my experience as a church-going youth. Church to me was a reminder that there's something bigger than you. It was seeing a powerful black man speak. I was raised primarily by women. It was an exercise in humility. It was pause and appreciate. But it was also something you had to do. I found more learnings not in that mass session that took place. It was in what we call Sunday school, where we all went to the basement.
Yep.
And that's where the individual DJ, did you do your homework?
Yep.
That's where the flourishing part came for me. Right? Sunday school, man. It was like I actually looked for, and there were treats in Sunday school.
Always treats. Always
yeah,
good
right? You know what? I ain't mad at
I ain't
rewarding
mad
kids.
at snacks either.
Vacation Bible school too, if you were on that. Man, snacks were good.
Yeah, reward them for learning scripture. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I ain't mad at that. That's why we get recess in school. So whatever. So man, it made me think a lot about, and you know, there's always that good and evil element in any of those experiences. But I would say it brought some things back for me. That main thing being when we think about, you know, is Sammy flourishing? If we had to say, I found myself going back to Sunday school, which I'd kind of forgotten about. And unfortunately, I told you guys my aunt passed. I was back in that same church. And I was looking at those stairs like, man, I remember being 8, 9 years old, walking down those stairs, going to Sunday school. And I'm thinking, I'm about to get all those treats because I did my studies. Like, I know those are all mine. And yet little wrapped candies and stuff like that. So it's deep, man.
Yeah.
You know, when I watch the film and I think about all of the different characters and how they were portrayed, I think one of the other things that stands out for me is the use of color. And the red, white, and blue, right? A lot of reds and blues, the questions around, well, what color is the, right? All of that. And we know, Reg, you sent me something this morning around color, right? That you could potentially relate back to that. So was there anything significant for you guys, whether it was color or imagery, symbolism?
Off the top of my head, the thing that comes to mind first and foremost is the post-credit scene where Stack and Mary are rendered, you know, Coogee sweater, the full 92 kind of look of it all. I was fascinated by that, and I wondered, as we think about potential sequels, what that looked like. So that caught my attention. I really thought that the street scenes where you see the kind of retail environment that we're in, where it's clearly a white kind of shopping experience on one side of the street and a black shopping experience on the other side of the street. And in the details, you can see the different names of the retail establishments, which was a subtle way to also reinforce all the different communities that were down there participating in commerce, right? If you go back and check that out, that was fascinating to me. I thought the use of the South as a character, right? In the cinematography. So whether it is the chain gang or the cotton, not just the cotton picking that Cornbread and his lady were doing, but the scenes of cotton in the background to remind you of all that environment was in 1932. The head of the clan, the chaw, the chew, the spit, like all the things that recreated a time that's not that long ago that is visceral. Like you could feel the hate and tension of Jim Crow hanging in the air. I thought how they rendered the South as character was really powerful.
Yeah, I think to your point in terms of how they rendered the South, I think they had incredible vignettes of every single aspect of it, from the sharecroppers to the town, as you mentioned. Delroy's character, I think he was an integral character to like sort of that South hidden juke joint, speakeasy type thing, type vibe that everybody goes to escape. I loved the addition of the fake money or the tokens,
Plantation money.
the plantation money. Wow,
Don't take no wood nickel.
that really was interesting because of the journey from home to the north, Chicago being where they were, and then a return home, going to a place full of riches, obviously some shady stuff going on, coming back and being like, we need real money out here. We've stepped up type of narrative. I thought that was done very well, and I thought the way they handled it and the way they talked about it, about just offering a moment of joy and that this is what they have. Let them drink.
Yep. Annie again for the win.
Annie for the win. You serving the Italian wine, they just want some corn liquor.
And Irish beer.
And Irish beer, they want some corn liquor and keep it moving.
While making it clear to their little cousin, hey man, be clear, they've been lying to you. Chicago ain't nothing but the South with taller buildings.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. We went up here and we robbed them Italians, we robbed them Irish. They gonna come a looking, but it wasn't sexy up there, and now we back. Another point in there that I thought was fascinating is a reminder of how many black folk, particularly black men in this case, fought in World War I and came back to not a hero's welcome, even though they did heroic things. And while they were still second-class citizens, they had first-class war training, and them boys was ready for the smoke. And when we say we're going to lay you down, we're going to lay you down if you step on our property. You're not getting no more money from us. If we see you on your property, we're going to kill every one of you. And I thought that was a powerful reminder of, yet again, another way to be free is to secure the perimeter, right? To be really, really mindful of that which is yours to the extent that you can defend it. And they were very serious about that. So I appreciate weaving in that thread of black veterans within Jim Crow South, within Depression era Jim Crow South at that, right? Because it's 1932, height of the Depression. And we don't hear any discussion about the Depression other than to some extent the fighting over alcohol that brought them back from Chicago back down. I'll say this: my dad's people from Tennessee, small town Tennessee. My dad grew up on a farm, and he told stories of growing up during the Depression, but being a resource center for black folk and white folks who were struggling. We had our own crops. We had our own animals, and his father and mother homesteading and running their farm within a community of black farmers was able to really get through without the pressure of the Depression crushing their economic viability. And while my grandparents didn't have college educations, I'm not even sure they had high school educations, their independence and their ability to survive on their own terms created a space for my father, his brothers and sisters to get a way that led them through, black only high schools, then the Lane College they're in, the small town they grew up in. And so, when we say from the mud, my people from the mud, certainly, and to watch this rendered on the screen and to see that that's the origin story for many of us. And some of us are in different stages of life than our parents and grandparents grew up in, but don't get it twisted. Many, if not most of us, come from a similar origin story. And to see how far we've been able to move the needle while still fighting the beast is something to take, a pause and contemplate. And I think in this storytelling, while that fake money, that plantation money is a constraint, Annie's point about freedom still resonates and is powerful. And out of that, they're going to birth a generation that's going to go beyond their lived experience in that moment.
I caught it the second time. Remember Remick when he was fleeing from the Choctaw and came up on the house of the white couple, and that door, and the door opened.
Silly.
Did you see the flash to the white hood?
The hood, yep.
Yes.
Yep. Because
okay.
Oh, yeah.
It was a little bit for me of the enemy can come in different forms. Evil can come in different forms. And Remick was clear. Yeah, we don't mess with them. We don't really mess with them. We on something different. And you can be a part of this.
And the Choctaw tried to warn them.
Tried to warn them.
Absolutely.
Knew they wasn't going to listen.
Absolutely. But that quick flash. Exactly.
Should have listened to them.
And we know who you think he is. Right?
Exactly.
So man, that one was that little flash for me. I really picked up on it the second time. And so again, man, there's a part of me, I like to think of myself as innovative, creative, and what I do in education. Man, this brother reminded me, man, you got a lot of work to do to hit the way he's hitting.
It's impressive.
And to reach an audience the way he's reaching it.
So that's in the time remaining, let's pivot to the meta, the outside of the frame of getting this movie made. So he's got an all-star, not just cast, but crew, right? So the director of photography, amazing woman. The amazing Ruth Carter in costume design. Ludwig, the dude doing the score and the soundtracking, amazing. But this conversation around the deal he was able to negotiate because he created the content, right? So as the writer and director and writer of an original piece of content and a track record, he's able to leverage that into a deal where the full ownership rights of this will revert back to him in 25 years.
25
and
years.
He got a first dollar gross deal so that every dollar that comes in, he gets his off the top of the gross, not the net, not on the back end. And there was consternation about that, but the reality is he earned that buck like a mug, to quote a Wire, famous line. And so I was fascinated by the business of building this film. What do you all think about this as a project on the meta? We are still inside the belly of the beast that is Hollywood type conversation.
Incredible, just as incredible as the film itself. The humility, and I mean that in a positive way, for him to reach out to folks and say, I know I can do a great job on my own, but man, that methodology of filmmaking that you use, homeboy, I need to know more about that. Those types of, that level of humility. But the deal itself, groundbreaking, because other production houses still have an issue with that and the precedent that it sets. You and I both know we've seen versions of I Want That Gross. I'll call it Michael Jordan and his deal with Brand Jordan. We've seen different versions of it. He's still eating off that real, by the way, right? So we've seen versions of that. But to this extent, with someone so young outside of sport, which is kind of what we're known for, the hole we're put in.
Sure.
It's just incredible, man. And I think that should be studied the same way the film is itself. That's my 2 cents.
It's an incredible deal. It's incredibly intelligent. And I know, DJ, you don't like analogies, but Sammy said he wasn't going to Mound Bayou in the film. And I think of Mound Bayou as sort of the black production house, if you think about it. He was going wherever he was going to go. And I think that's exactly what Ryan Coogler did. He knew he had resources. He knew he had community. And he knows he's bigger than needing to kind of niche himself, corner himself strictly to one space. And so while he could have maybe fallen into, though I don't think he would have, sort of a strictly all black or a strictly, specific type of production, he was like, no, I want all the bag now. And that's exactly what he did. And so I feel like it references in the film as well. And yes, it's iconic.
Agreed. One is, for those of y'all who don't know the history of Mound Bayou, check it out. It's we don't have time to go through it now, but it's worth a Google to understand what Mound Bayou represented once upon a time as Black freedom and flourishing. Easter eggs for y'all that I just discovered in the last 48 hours. So if you go on Spotify, put up Sinners, what's the dude's name? I forget, Sinners artist. You will find in the About section 3 newspaper clippings from different time frames. One is from a newspaper out of Boston back in the early 1900s that talks about this ship that shows up in harbor where there was some strange dealings happening the night before. The next day, people board the ship and find nobody on it but blood and a whole bunch of other stuff there. And remember, Remick talks about coming over on a ship. That's a reference document. Second is bank robbery rocks Clarksdale, 2 masked criminals on the loose. 2 brothers were robbing banks in Clarksdale going back to, I don't know, this is 1924. And then the third one is gang tensions, the Chicago Daily Times, gang tensions rise in Chicago, Irish mob and Italian mafia clash from 1932. I haven't gone to verify whether or not those clips are real or just planted newspapers. They look real. They're sitting there on Spotify. But check them out, because I'm fascinated by Ryan's process of research, like the depths to which he goes to go down into the Mississippi Delta and interview folks, to really dig deep in the archival research, to really survey and interview the buddy guys of the world. Like the depths he goes to study his craft as auteur, the technical aspects of how he shot it, all of that as artist and businessman, but first and foremost, a brother who loves Black folk, comes through loud and clear. And man, Mama, he made that. And I'm so excited to see what comes next from him.
I know we have to close soon. If I had to pay homage to a specific line that I ain't gonna lie, I was sitting the second time like, would you hurry up and say this, Mary? You can rob trains and banks. Do you remember the rest?
Keep going.
No, I'm not.
You started it now.
And I'm finished. My question is, do you recall what she said?
I do.
Nakeia, do you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there's a whole conversation to be had about the phenomenal casting of Hailee Steinfeld, whose real life story mimics the story of Mary in the movie. And we're not gonna get into the quadroon, octoroon conversation, but just the real life story of there's some Black in her lineage that, quite frankly, this film has allowed her to have a family conversation in real time.
Yep.
That you all, and we all know, white folks who got some black in them that's latent and they can't speak to are never really sure how they're going to be received. And I can only imagine, based on the little bit she and the team have said, that them black folks welcomed her with open arms, and it unlocked a part of her that she can't even speak to.
As we always do.
Because that cast and crew really, really tight, but they showed her love, and she'll be changed forever, as what she has said.
She family.
And see that again. I'm joking about that scene. What's curious to me about that is, she's making a distinction between how are you choosing your level of sinning. What's your process?
Sure.
Right. So I'm gonna test your process.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought it was deep. I thought it was real deep.
Yeah. We should, at the end here, we should probably say, spoiler alerts, we're going to talk about sinners, and there's going to be a lot of stuff involved. If you've gotten this far, sorry.
This is, y'all have seen, y'all remember the character Choir Boy in the 5 Heartbeats?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. It's thought about him. Sammy is Choir Boy,
All day long.
All day long.
And I'm glad to see him be represented by Buddy Guy.
Yes.
At the end.
Man, that's so incredible.
Amazing.
With those scars.
With the scars, they did that.
Yeah. Show him love. We've had a wonderful time talking about sinners. Amazing. I think it should not go unsaid that Black creatives telling Black stories hits different, and indeed, Mama, we made it. Peace.
Mama, we made it.